name is Rhonda Miller. I'm the mother of a beautiful boy, Ben, who lived with addiction. Today I'd like to talk to you about changing our dialogue so that we can bring an end to the stigma epidemic. In this program, I'm going to talk to you about 4 things that are important to me: why language matters, our family story and the stigma we experienced, our response by breaking the silence to end the stigma, and your response, an opportunity to change the conversation and get involved. The U.S. Surgeon General Jerome Adams stated, "The biggest killer out there is stigma. Stigma keeps people in the shadows. Stigma keeps people from coming forward and asking for help. Stigma keeps families from admitting that there is a problem." Science has proven that substance use disorder is a chronic brain disease that can be managed with medical treatment. It is not a moral failing or a character flaw. Addiction is highly stigmatized, and that stigma is fueling an American public health crisis. Language matters. Use person-first language when talking about substance use. That means an individual's condition, illness, or behavior is only one aspect of who that person is, not the defining characteristic. An example of person-first language would be, "My son was a person who lived with addiction," versus "my son was an addict." Person-first language is proven to reduce stigma. It's not about being sensitive, polite, or politically correct. It's about ending damaging biases that prevents people from getting help. Person-first language doesn't define a person based on any medical disorder they may have. It's non-judgmental and neutral. So what first-person language should we use to talk about addiction? The Pennsylvania Department of Human Services recommends these terms and phrases as a starting point. Don't use the terms junkie, addict, or druggie. Describe somebody as a person with substance use disorder. Rather than relapsed, they had a setback. Rather than stayed clean, they maintained recovery. Rather than having a dirty drug screen, they had a positive drug screen. And rather than saying that medication is a crutch, recognize that medication is a treatment tool. Language matters. We can learn from historical movements that stigma can be significantly reduced by changing language. The disability rights movement advocated to remove labels such as retarded to non-discriminatory terms such as learning or intellectual disability. And the stigmatizing term cripple has been changed to physical disability. A person with schizophrenia is not a schizophrenic. Likewise, the gay rights movement advocated to remove derogatory labels such as fag or homo to non-discriminatory language such as gay, lesbian, homosexual, or transgender. It's now time for our movement to make changes to non-discriminatory terminology. It's up to us to advocate. It may seem small, but language makes a huge difference. By using person-first language, we can help reduce the harmful stigma associated with addiction so that people living with addiction and their families get the help they need and deserve. We should also be mindful, however, that within mutual aid groups such as AA and NA, it is acceptable for members to use the terms alcoholic and addict to describe themselves in that context. Now, I'd like to share our story. This is our beautiful and precious son, Ben. Ben lived with a debilitating disease, opioid use disorder. It began in his teenage years and spanned into early adulthood. Ben was filled with joy and humor, and he lit up the room. He created energy wherever he went. But his light was snuffed out prematurely. I'm fed up. I'm fed up that insurance companies call the shots to determine the medical care our loved ones are provided with, for not treating them like human beings living with a chronic medical condition. Would a diabetic or heart attack patient be kicked out onto the street when they needed medical care? No. As a high-risk IV heroin user, chronic relapser, and recent overdose survivor, Ben was at high risk and prematurely discharged from the inpatient rehab at the indisputable decision of the insurance company. And they cited their reason as Ben no longer needed this level of care. 6 weeks later, Ben was dead. Ben died from fentanyl poisoning in 2016, 1 week before his 24th birthday. We are heartbroken and we are devastated. In our experience, his death was highly stigmatized. Meals were not brought in after Ben died. Families and friends left our lives. We were left alone to grieve in isolation, unsupported. This is a result of the lack of understanding about the disease of addiction and the stigma surrounding it. After a time of mourning, we took action. I got in touch with my anger, and I became fed up. I was fed up with the greed of pharmaceutical companies who created this man-made crisis. Big pharma executives need to be held personally accountable for the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people to opioids. They're getting away with murder with just a slap on the wrist. Where is the outrage? I became involved with advocacy work. I attended protests at Purdue Pharmaceuticals in Connecticut, the Sackler Gallery of the Smithsonian Institution in DC, and others, and our voices were added to the battle cry of parents and allies across the nation. The pressure mounted, and Purdue filed bankruptcy. This is not the end, however. There is more work to do. In 2018, our family founded a nonprofit, Speak Up for Ben, and hosted a community forum on ending the opioid epidemic, featuring National Recovery Advocate Ryan Hampton.
A Northampton County mom who lost her son to addiction has organized an opioid forum for the Bethlehem community. I spoke with Rhonda Miller about her mission to bring community leaders and residents together in the fight against opioids.
God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference.
Rhonda Miller is a Bethlehem area mom who wants to bring about change in how people think about addiction.
Back in the 80s, AIDS was highly stigmatized, and nobody wanted to talk about it. But a lot has changed. Today, there's AIDS walks, there's AIDS is commonly discussed, and it's no longer stigmatized. So people who develop AIDS get help. And that's what I hope and visualize for substance use disorder.
Rhonda lost her son, Ben, in August of 2016, just 1 week before his 24th birthday. She says he took a deadly dose of fentanyl, a powerful synthetic opioid. Now she's speaking up for her son through her newly launched organization, Speak Up for Ben, which aims to provide information about substance use disorder.
I've always been a person that's passionate about causes and injustices, but having had this very deeply personal experience watching my son suffer with an opioid addiction, this really caused me to want to speak up. And speak up for Ben and speak up for all those that suffer with this horrific disease that don't have a voice.
Rhonda says Ben's addiction started at a young age.
Substance use oftentimes is secretive. I believe it probably started with alcohol, visiting friends' homes, and that graduated to marijuana. And then at some point he was introduced to pills, but it was with other students, and his suppliers were students.
She says her son struggled with and was treated for anxiety and depression, but the disease of addiction took over. He fought it for 8 years and attended inpatient rehab 11 times.
My son made a bad choice when he was 16 years old and accepted pills from a friend. He made a bad choice. Little did he know that just a couple pills was going to put him on the path of a horrendous opioid addiction over which he had no control. And I can say that because I personally experienced it and I lived it, watching him try and fight this addiction for 8 long and arduous years. He was in 11 inpatient rehabs. He did not want to have a drug addiction.
Her Hanover Township home is filled with family pictures and keepsakes of Ben's.
So this is Ben's tree. We put this up after we lost him, and he loved colored lights. He always wanted a Christmas tree with colored lights. And it's filled with ornaments from his childhood and ornaments that symbolized his many interests. He was a musician and he had a blue guitar. He also played the keyboard in a band. Ben was just an awesome young man. He had dreams, he had hopes, he had aspirations for a happy, fulfilled life. Ben was a soccer star and he was a stellar student as well. So he was the boy next door, not what you might suspect as being, quote, a drug addict. So this could happen to anyone.
She believes addiction still has a stigma that prevents people from understanding it.
Some people consider it a moral failing. They consider it somebody who has made bad choices. And this is really a problem because it perpetuates the stigma.
Rhonda is working to educate the public. This Saturday, she organized a free community opioid forum at Liberty High School, where Ben once attended.
Even folks that don't have any direct experience with addiction, but they're just concerned because they see there's a crisis in our community. We invite them to come out and learn what they can do to make a difference.
Guests of the forum will learn how to properly store and dispose medications and learn how to administer naloxone or Narcan, the opioid antidote. The panelists include community leaders like Northampton County DA John Morganelli and Ryan Hampton, author of American Fix.
Ryan Hampton is a national recovery advocate. He's a young man in recovery himself. He had a 10-year IV heroin addiction. He was previously a White House staffer and had a career in politics. He has a powerful story.
In memory of her son, Rhonda also started a scholarship fund to Colby Academy, the Lehigh Valley's first addiction recovery high school, set to open in the fall of 2019. It will be run by the Diocese of Allentown and located in Hanover Township, Northampton County. Rhonda says families need more options when it comes to addiction. She says oftentimes Ben and her family felt alone as they tried to figure it out.
His favorite slogan is, "I'll figure it out." He just tried to live life one day at a time and figure out each day as it came.
And now Rhonda hopes the Bethlehem community will work with her to figure out solutions in the opioid fight.
When we founded Speak Up for Ben, we defined our mission through compassion and understanding of the family disease of addiction. We seek to provide education, support, comfort, and healing to people who are at risk for, experiencing, or recovering from substance use disorder, their families, and the families of those who lost their battle. This will be accomplished through educational forums, community events, and provided supportive programming through the Oasis Community Center in Northampton County, Pennsylvania. The name Ben forms the acronym Break the Silence, End the Stigma, Never Forget. Our journey into addiction began while Ben was a teenager. At age 17, Ben was prescribed opioids after a botched wisdom tooth surgery. After I informed the dentist that Ben had recently been inpatient for addiction, and I requested that no strong pain medication be prescribed, we were not informed of the highly addictive nature of opioids, which was not commonly known by consumers at that time. This put Ben on the path of abusing prescription pain medication. Our response? Legislation changes are needed. We advocated for patients' right to know. When an opioid is prescribed, patients and parents in Pennsylvania have the right to know that the opioids create a dependency, that there is a link between prescription drug dependency and heroin abuse, and that there are possible non-opioid alternative treatments. With the support of Pennsylvanians, in 2019, the Patient Opioid Notification Act was signed into law. Another area that needs more support is harm reduction. After Ben became addicted to opioids, his primary physician, who was in recovery from addiction himself, prescribed Ben Suboxone. He later kicked him off cold turkey after discovering other substances in his system. With no other known options, Ben turned to street heroin. This merciless act led Ben to rapidly descend into the depths of heroin addiction. This is an example of stigma from the medical community, that people living with substance use disorder should maintain complete and total abstinence in order to receive treatment. Would a person in a diabetic coma be denied treatment because they ate foods they shouldn't have? No. There's a stigma against medication-assisted recovery. If Ben had gradually tapered off Suboxone, he may not have turned to heroin. Harm reduction works. The changes that we see that are needed are how people are treated. We need to lobby for changes in the insurance industry, and money from big pharma should be used to fund changes in the treatment industry. Youth with addictions need special support. Recovery high schools should be made available to support a sober environment for these students. We've established the Ben Miller Memorial Scholarship at Colby Academy, a new faith-based recovery high school in Bethlehem, to support Lehigh Valley students in recovery. We have also organized several campaigns designed to reduce the stigma associated with addiction by raising awareness of the dangers of opioids and that anyone can become addicted. One way we have done this is through our Angels of the Valley banner project, on display at Steel Stacks in Bethlehem. These banners are hung every September during National Recovery Month. Viewers will notice the faces of the boys and girls next door. They are sons and daughters, friends and neighbors, and their lives mattered. I will speak up. I will speak up for families to end the stigma epidemic so that those living with addiction and their families get the support and help they need and deserve. Families are the forgotten ones. Families are sick too. We become the caregivers, advocates, case managers. We are exhausted. We are depleted. We are hurting. We are traumatized. We are bereaved. We suffer an invisible illness. We lack support, and we are left by the wayside, suffering in silence, dying inside. Well, I spoke up, and we were heard. Thanks to the support of Northampton County Drug and Alcohol Division, Speak Up for Ben founded the Oasis Community Center, a tranquil retreat in Bethlehem where families can come out of the darkness and into the light, to be nurtured with support, to learn to feel joy again, and to heal. We offer certified family recovery specialist services. Myself, along with my colleague Brenda, are here to guide families into a healing journey and recovery plan. We have many resources to connect you to at Oasis, across the Lehigh Valley, regionally, and even nationally. You do not have to do this alone. Recovery is not a one-size-fits-all. There are many pathways to recovery outside of 12-step programs, such as Smart Recovery, She Recovers, Celebrate Recovery, and Cognitive Behavioral Therapy, to name a few. These pathways can be effective for both family members and those living with addiction. Oasis offers family support groups, grief recovery groups, family counseling, therapeutic healing activities, community speakers, fun, fellowship, and a safe place to come to where stigma does not exist. You can attend our groups and activities in person, CDC compliant, or virtually. Now, I'd like to give you a tour of Oasis.
Oasis, a peaceful area in the midst of a difficult, troubled situation.
Oasis, healing center for families so that they would have the support to cope with their loss.
The Oasis Community Center, an example of community leadership, taking their profound, unimaginable grief and directing it in a positive way that will bring some measure of peace and comfort to other families. We are not giving up on anyone. We are not giving up on anyone.
It's a picture-perfect setting for us to experience healing in community. Opportunities, activities, support, information, serenity. Oasis.
Lastly, I will also speak up for the forgotten victims, the children. They are stigmatized too, due to parental addiction. I am an adult child of alcoholic parents. As children, we experience shame. We learn we can't bring our friends home because we don't know what we might find. We experience embarrassment. Don't look at me, I'm neglected and abused. We experience blame. It's my fault. If I could only please my parents, they wouldn't drink and become angry. We experience stigma. My peers are not allowed to play with me because I come from a bad family. We learn we can't trust. We can't count on parents, and we often can't count on participating in after-school activities or anything that relies on our parents for help. And we think we have to fix this. There's a role reversal. Children become the caregivers for their parents, their consolers, their confidants. We learn the unspoken family rules. Don't talk, don't trust, don't feel. Millions of children are impacted, thousands in the Lehigh Valley. Children are the victims of addiction, and we need to stop the cycle.
I sat in the bed on a cold, dark night, listening, hearing, filled with fright. I knew it was back. I heard all her cries, the monster in Mummy that she sometimes hides. I heard the breaking, the smashing plates. I heard her screaming, and I knew it was too late. Where was my mummy? Where did she go? The monster consumed her, and she didn't know. Morning came along as I sat in my bed, wishing and willing that damn monster dead. I saw all the bottles, the smashed cups and glasses. My mum's in bed, while the hangover passes. The monster's asleep now. My mum's here for the day, but as night falls, I cry because my mummy's gone away.
I hate to think. My dad loves to drink. He's ill. He's sick. But no matter what, beside him I stick. Sometimes I hate him. But sometimes I love him. And I always end up hugging him. He sleeps a lot. And he has photos of me when I was little. But he never looks at them. One minute he's happy, the next he's angry. Hatred turns to love and the love turns to hatred. Maybe he'll be like that forever. Or maybe he'll change. I don't know. But I do know he loves me no matter what happens.
They say the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. But not me. I was merely a seed that blossomed into me. I grew. Now you just get what you see. But tell me what you see when looking at me. Like the apple that fell from the tree. Outside it looks fine, but inside the caterpillar is eating me. They say the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, but not me. I smile when I'm sad because when I look and see, there's many other apples that have fallen like me. Those apples found their way. And I know I can too. You can fall from a rotten tree, but your future's down to you. They say the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, but not me. One day, I will be.
As you can tell by the narrator's dialect, this is a global problem. There are few programs supporting the children of addicted parents. We need to join together as a community to form a support network so that these children don't fall through the cracks and the cycle of family addiction doesn't begin again. We are currently developing new programs at Oasis to support children in the Lehigh Valley affected by parental addiction. In summary, what can you do to change the dialogue and end the stigma? Epidemic. You can change your language to person first. You can support families affected by a loved one's addiction. You can share the free resources available at Oasis. And you can join Speak Up for Ben in the movement to end the stigma and support family recovery. We are forming community partnerships, and we would like to hear from members of the community and local organizations who want to share in our mission to end the stigma. Thank you for taking the time to listen. Sending peace.